Good afternoon from the World Economic Forum studios in Geneva, and thank you for joining us for this special session, Beneath the Surface, the Economic Dimension of Cybersecurity. This issue is front and center on the global agenda for policymakers and companies alike, an economic imperative that, if approached effectively, can also have positive impact on global GDP. Global cybercrime is projected to hit over $10 trillion this year, an amazing figure representing about 10% of global output. At the same time, cybersecurity spending is expected to grow to $400 billion by the close of the decade. Serious questions remain about how effectively the economic dimensions are tracked and how they translate into resilience. This session is part of the launch of the Center for Cyber Economics in Riyadh, a collaboration between the World Economic Forum and the Global Cybersecurity Forum. I'm delighted to welcome into the studio today Akshay Joshi, head of the World Economic Forum's Center for Cybersecurity, Abdulrahman Al-Hassan, acting CEO of Global Cybersecurity Forum in Riyadh, and Oku Isik, the professor of digital strategy and cybersecurity at IMD in Lausanne. It's nice to have all three of you here. It's a very important window of time to talk about this, and I'm wondering, actually, if I can, to jump in about the reframing of the debate. It seems to me, as a keen observer of cybersecurity and global economic development today, that the spotlight is not shown on cybersecurity enough. How do we reframe it, and what does the center have to do with that?
You're very right, John. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. I think cybersecurity is increasingly seen as an enabler of economic prosperity, right? It helps preserve the benefits of digitalization for all. Equally, it is an essential component of trust. How do we ensure trust? As more and more societies are going digital, there is this inherent need to safeguard trust and ensure that people feel confident about the technologies they use, and increasingly as they get pervasive. Having said that, when we look at leadership perspectives on cybersecurity, increasingly it's perceived as a technical issue. In fact, one of the key objectives of the World Economic Forum Center for Cybersecurity has been in terms of how can we elevate cybersecurity as a strategic business imperative. Having said that, for senior leaders to credibly understand the impacts of cybersecurity or the price of inaction on cybersecurity, we need credible metrics. Business leaders or leaders in government often understand, what are the tangible impacts that inaction can have, but yet there isn't much literature available in terms of what are the economics of cybersecurity.
Interesting you say, because they're not reliable figures. For example, if I'm researching a session like this, I can find 4 different figures about the same topic, and that's the challenge.
Exactly. And if I was to build on that, let's take cybercrime as an example. Now, it's a well-acknowledged fact that the vast majority of cybercrime goes unreported. So if you're thinking about the larger impacts of cybercrime, having a methodology that is able to accurately capture what are the impacts is really, really challenging. So my hope is that, through this newly launched Center for Cyber Economics, where we are really grateful to collaborate with the Global Cybersecurity Forum and welcome them as part of the Fourth Industrial Revolution Network, we'll be able to identify some cutting-edge statistics, some research that can really help build a narrative that can support us in translating this narrative and soliciting the right leadership action on cybersecurity, which is really, it's a global good at this point.
Yeah, let me bring in the acting CEO of the Global Cybersecurity Forum and look at the macroeconomic implications, if you will, if you don't act. And actually brought up something very interesting, is about trust. If I'm opening my banking app, I want to make sure that my finances are secure. If I'm booking travel, does my data stay with that organization or does it spread? Have you analyzed the macroeconomic implications, Abdulrahman? And secondarily, in the center, can you delve into the vulnerabilities of small and medium-sized enterprises? They represent 75 to 85% of job creation around the world. Just you can pick the country and it's the same. What's your hope here?
Well, thank you very much, John, for this introduction, and I am very glad to be here today in this very important milestone, launching the Center for Cyber Economics in collaboration between WIF and GCF. So in order for us to understand the macroeconomics, John, we need to understand and realize that cybersecurity is not about protecting systems. It's about protecting societies. It's about protecting economies. And the fallout or the cybersecurity, the economic fallout of single cyber attack could be an immediate and far-reaching. So if we take, for example, one incident that happened to one of the countries in Central America, it is expected that the impact of that incident is estimated to be 2.5 of their GDP, which is quite a lot. And the issue will be more complicated as we are relying more and more in cyberspace. So as you have rightly mentioned, the cost of cybercrime is expected to reach 10.5 trillion annually, and 10%, and that equivalent to 10% of the global GDP. So that brings us to a question: are we funding the cybersecurity in the right approach? So according to some of the statistics, in the high-income countries, they spend almost $30 per capita, compared to only $1 per capita in low-income countries. So that brings us to a conclusion that we need to shed more light into the cyber economics in order to help the decision makers around the world and equip them with the right information to take the right decisions. According to the World Bank, the investment in cybersecurity could increase the GDP by almost 1.5%.
If you do the right thing.
If you do the right thing. So that's the purpose of the Center of Cyber Economics. We are going to have, as Akshay mentioned, the right information that will equip the decision maker around the world with the information they need, in collaboration with all stakeholders in the field, be it government, academia, private sector, NGOs, international organizations, and others.
Thanks very much. Oiku, Abdulrahman brought up an interesting point here. If you look at that gap, you would say mind the gap on the UK London Underground, right? Because of the space between the train and the platform. That $30 per capita, say in North America, vis-a-vis some large developing economies around the world spending $1 per capita, that's a big risk. And I do worry, if you look at the COVID-19 example, when the crisis hit, the pandemic hit, people were starving to get the vaccines and hustling to get the vaccines, and they had national priorities. And I think, how do we make cybersecurity an international priority? And as Abdulrahman said, how do you have greater collaboration come out of it? It's easy to say, but how do you do it in practice, in your view?
Thank you, John. First of all, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Cyber inequity is the term that we use to refer to exactly what you're describing. And as you said, it's such a big topic with high-reaching implications, right? What we see is the root cause behind that gap could be lack of access to funds, as simple as it goes, right? Or lack of access to resources. I'm imagining key critical cybersecurity certifications only available in English, for instance, right? That's a good example of availability.
That's one barrier for sure.
Exactly, so access to information. Clearly, access to talent, we talk about regardless of geography or SME versus large corporations, we do talk about a big cyber talent gap globally. So clearly, when organizations fish in the same pond, so to say, talent does go to the higher paying organizations. So that becomes another challenge for smaller organizations. So there are resource related reasons why we do see that gap, but also I think mindset must also be acknowledged. I just want to quickly echo what Akshay was saying about executives seeing this as a technology challenge typically. I just want to add also, every day in the classroom, there are those two big groups, those that see it as a technology challenge and those that see it as a compliance challenge. So I think there's still work to do to realize that we have to switch from awareness to accountability when it comes to business executives. So probably that kind of awareness creation and mindset change is also going to help with closing that gap.
I like the way you said it, because usually for a CEO, it's a line item. It's like, how much am I spending on technology? And they want growth out of it, but you also need a defense. Abdurrahman, can you pick up on this concept of the skills gap and what it means, the shortage of workers around the world, and closing the gap between the developed, where the talent is usually trained, and the developing world, where they're also needed as well? What do you see?
Yeah, in order for us to understand that, we need to understand what is the gap that we are talking about. So according to some statistics, it's estimated that there is today 2.8 million professionals. This is the amount of gap, with almost 72% of the roles are filled. So that's bring us to, that is not only a security risk, but also it is a growth bottleneck. So we need to make sure that the approaches that we are tackling to resolve that issue is in place. So it is not only it is not only a symptom of disinterest, but it's also the way that we approach the issue into reality. So from our perspective in the GCF, we think that in order to solve and tackle the issue of the talent gap, we need to approach it from 3 different angles. The first one is that we need to have the right governance in place at the national level in order to avoid the duplication of efforts and to align all efforts toward a shared objective at the national level. The second point is that we need to have the regulations and policies are in place, not only those which tackle the capacity building and the talent directly, but also those which indirectly, for example, those related to the best utilization of the resources, considering that we do have a shortage in the availability of the resources. And the third thing is that we need to have a long life learning experience. The cybersecurity is a continuous changing environment. So if you didn't learn something today, it would be quite late to learn it tomorrow after the incident happened. So we need to make sure that that cycle is there. And if we look into these 3 dimensions, that will help us to resolve the issue more quickly and will align efforts at the national level.
Good. Data is a new gold, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity, because you need accurate data. This is complex, actually, and this is something we've learned in the last 30 years of globalization, the creation of the World Trade Organization, global supply chains. But inherently, as you get more connected with global supply chains, you inherit risk. And then there's the third-party providers for the major companies around the world, the manufacturers. And I think this is an opportunity to understand more about the resilience or building resilience for supply chains.
You know, I mean, supply chain risk management is one of the most prevalent risks. We published a report called the Global Cybersecurity Outlook, and year on year, it remains one of the most pressing concerns for cyber leaders. And one where, you know, most actions seem to fall short because there are so many dependencies, right? If you're thinking about it, when you think about an ecosystem, it's a popular cliche, but quite appreciated. You're only as good as the weakest link in the chain, right?
You took the words out of my mouth. I was thinking exactly, where's the weakest link, right?
But the question is, what are some of the incentives that can be brought into place to ensure that the resilience of the ecosystem as a whole is good? So if we think about, there have been a lot of incidents, you know, I mean, for example, with SolarWinds or with MoveIt in the past, you know, I mean, there is enough appreciation for the impacts of disruptions to the supply chain, right? But yet, the practices by means of which you assess the security posture of your supply chain, etc., are very complex. I have to say that one of the we have a community here, the cyber resilience in oil and gas, where I think we have a strong collaboration also with the kingdom by virtue of Saudi Aramco being really engaged in that work, but also the National Cybersecurity Authority. And what is commendable is in the kingdom, there has been a model that has been put out. It's called a CCC model, which has a harmonized questionnaire. And therefore, if an entity has been vetted once, then there is some mechanism of knowing that it's a good entity to do business with across the world, across the kingdom. Now, if you compare questionnaires, 80%, I would argue, is similar. But then there are differences in terms of how we like articulation based on which part of the world you're coming from, etc. That creates, I think, a difference in terms of how we deal with it. I want to point out one more example. What makes supply chain even more challenging? If we think about the current geopolitical environment, right, as we are seeing, a shift in terms of trading partners, etc., what does it mean tangibly? It means that we are creating new supply chains at an unprecedented pace.
Excellent.
At one level, to bring together these supply chains is a big challenge, but doing that while ensuring that the cyber risks that they could bring into your ecosystem are accounted for and taken care of is another thing that we need to be conscious
And we're
about.
moving at a very fast pace in
Absolutely.
that reshuffling, right?
So if you're thinking a legacy supply chain, a well-established supply chain where you haven't been able to do it well because of a plethora of reasons, now if you're thinking about rapidly evolving supply chains, it introduces a very interesting dimension and one that we will increasingly need to solve for with very real economic consequences.
What are the regulatory levers, would you say, Oiku, here, if you're looking at governments that want to be part of that supply chain? What incentives do you give them? Do you have to have the right regulations? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I wanted to also highlight that, but very quickly, I think the examples given are a great way to highlight the fact that cybersecurity, maybe as a field, started as a technical challenge, has now turned into a systemic challenge, right? Systemic risk. Even when you think of the coffee we drink, from bean to cup, we talk about at least 10 steps. So even the most simplest supply chain has that kind of complexity. And today, most businesses have visibility in the first level of partners, right? So it's not realistic to expect or leave it on the shoulders of the organizations in that sense. So there's a need to systemically, like the example actually I shared, to deal with this. From a regulation perspective, Cyber Resilience Act, for instance, here in Europe, that is being enforced, but especially will completely be enforced as of next year, does talk about the fact that if you have, for instance, a digital component in your product, or if you are bringing in a software capability from a vendor, you are also liable. You cannot say that, oh, I'm manufacturing, let's say, a smart refrigerator, and the digital component comes from the software company. I'm not a software vendor, so I push all the risk to the software vendor. From now on, we will not be able to say that. So if you, as a manufacturer, are involving a digital counterpart, you are also responsible from the cybersecurity aspect of these things. I think this is a great lever to start distributing that responsibility. So me as a refrigerator manufacturer will have to ask and say, have you made sure that you have figured out or looked for at least vulnerabilities in your software product that I'm purchasing? How are we managing those risks? So I think that's a great first step towards creating awareness that this is also your risk, but also starting to create more understanding and visibility for organizations into their digital supply chain partners.
Okay, I wanted to follow up on this. If I'm a developing country and I'm fast growing, I want to capture the opportunity that's in front of me, and I want to take advantage of the next era of AI. People think if I'm spending money as a government or even as a corporation, I'm putting that money and I want a return, but they don't want to spend money on defense. So they'll go on offense for economic growth, but perhaps not defense. Okay, do you want to jump in? Abdul Rahman, actually, I think it's an interesting point. And this is, again, where this center could come into play. Please.
Unfortunately, using digital AI or any other emerging tech is always a more exciting conversation if it's around innovation, right? We do see this challenge when it comes to investing for security. That's almost always seen as a sunken cost, something that you need to do. But I think, as Akshay was mentioning early on, we are talking about this trust economy more and more these days. So being able to turn this around and say, I am doing this because I want to be the trusted partner of my stakeholders, of my customers. I'm a trustworthy business to engage with. Then that would be a very successful way of formulating cybersecurity as an enabler.
Good, please.
John, you mentioned that 75% of our economy is from SMEs. And this is also linked to what Akshay was saying. I mean, we do have this issue of supply chain. So we should not forget also that the cybersecurity is not realized by those companies.
Major corporations, right?
Exactly. I mean, those who are working in agriculture, in other fields, they don't realize that the cybersecurity is a key component of their work. So it is our mandate as NGOs and as stakeholders to collaborate together, to incentivize the public-private partnership, to make sure that we equip those SMEs with the right information and with the right approaches to make them more resilient in front of the attacks. That's I think what is our role, and that's what we are trying to do with this center, with the WIF and the GCF.
It should not be what you're suggesting here, an exclusive club of the leading tech companies or the Fortune 100
Exactly.
or 250. Do you want to pick up on it?
Yeah, I want to offer two reflections over here. One, I want to pick up on what Abdur Rahman said, and then I'll also add a different perspective to what Oiku was saying. On the SME side of things, just this morning, we were having a meeting talking about cyber inequity, and one of the participants shared a narrative about someone coming from an underprivileged background, starting to build an online business, taking it to 6 figures, only to realize one fine morning that because of a DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service attack, the order book really looked empty. What it meant was that it had catastrophic impacts across all people in the supply chain, because if you're thinking about a 6-figure business, obviously you have a well-established supply chain as well, and the impacts can be felt across. So there is a real economic component to all of this that cyber incidents can cause. To Oiku's point, I want to offer a different sort of, so if you're saying that opportunity is cool, risk not so cool, how can we make cybersecurity, investing in cybersecurity cool, right? I have a couple of reflections over there. One is, if you're thinking about all these wonderful technologies and you're thinking about, the benefits of digitalization, safeguarding it should also be cool so that we can continue to enjoy the benefits of it. The second aspect of it really is around, if we're thinking about a lot of environments where opportunities for employment may not be as pervasive, how can cybersecurity be a positive contributor over there? Can you provide people with respectable jobs? Can you provide them with high-paying jobs? By doing so, can you bring them out of poverty, as it may be, and really make the world a job market for them as opposed to their context? And I do know that, even colleagues at the Global Cybersecurity Forum have been doing a lot in this direction. The World Economic Forum has obviously been working on it. Also looking at how can you ensure better participation of women in the workforce, because cybersecurity is a career that is very apt for women also to partake in. So you can actually achieve a lot, and this opportunity side of things also has a very, very strong economic dimension to it.
Great. We have time for one more question, then I want to talk about the center and the objectives as well. Globalization is not so popular right now. Through this populist era, many are shunning international organizations and say they don't have a role. That cannot be the case in cybersecurity. Okay, you would agree with that. Abdur Rahman, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. You have to be very globalized to be sharing data, the economics behind it, the impact of it, the best practices of it. What are your thoughts on this, trying to defend yourself in the cyberspace when nobody wants to embrace international organizations?
In the cyberspace where there are no borders, right? I mean, another cliche that we always say, but that's really true. And I think really the key step towards making this better, at least, is better transparency and data collection. This is really at the heart of the problem, I do believe. We do not have clear guidelines, lack of transparency, or inconsistent statistics even. I think that really all comes down to not having good data collection practices. So we can generalize certain risks, and we can definitely create commonly agreed upon best practices, and the only way to be able to doing that is collecting data across the globe, right? Which we cannot do without collaboration, I think. So the path towards making this topic more accessible so that executives also think of this as a business risk and they take the accountability is efforts like this, right? Where we do design specific data collection initiatives so that we understand better. I mean, in a world where still organizations prefer hiding the breaches they experience rather than hoping to teach others from their own experience, I think we still have more, let's say, marketing to do about making this topic more accessible.
Well, speaking of marketing here, today actually marks the official launch of the Riyadh Center for Cybereconomics, as it says here on the studio. So congratulations, because I know this was in the works for a long time. I'd love to start with you, Abdul Rahman, in terms of, what are the next steps for activation of this center? Again, sometimes it looks good to have it on the studio, but where's the rubber hit the road, if you will? What's the activation pathway?
Well, I believe now we need to start the work and we need to activate the center. And we are going to, in the coming period, are going to activate the executive committee in collaboration with WIF. We are going to have the first meeting of that committee. That committee is going to be responsible on setting the strategic direction of the center, taking into account what we have just discussed together, as well as the priorities for the center, which are the areas that would be tackled first and will maximize the benefit for the globe. So that is the first thing that we are going to do. The second one, we are going to onboard the partners. So again, no government, no single stakeholder can do it alone. So we are going to onboard the partners from around the world, and this is an open invitation for everyone to join us in this center in order for us to make sure that we address the issues in collaboration with all stakeholders in a multi-stakeholder approach. And the third thing, we are going to activate the working groups that are going to produce the outcomes that we are all looking for. So we are going to start the working groups and produce the knowledge and the skills that is needed by the global community. And we look forward to show you a tangible outcomes very soon, hopefully in the next GCF in Riyadh.
Okay, the GCF in Riyadh is October 1 and 2, and I would imagine, Akshay, we'll see the center in full throttle at that stage, not only with panels that are going to be at the Global Cybersecurity Forum in Riyadh, but what are your aspirations from here to then? But I would even challenge you a little bit here. Let's look out 5 years. What will we have learned through this process?
The thought behind the Center for Cybereconomics is a really important one. You started off by saying that when you start to look for credible statistics, there isn't a repository that you find as of today.
Certainly not trusted. That's the other problem, yeah?
So if we are able to, how do you drive action to address issues? It needs to be evidence-based. It needs to be grounded in rigorous research. It needs to be done, as Abdul Rahman also said, in an inclusive manner so that people are coming together. There needs to be consensus about the approaches that are developed. Only then are they going to be pervasive, right? So I think the hope for the center is going to be that it's going to be a trusted platform for providing cutting-edge economic indicators that are actionable. If we are able to achieve that, then I have no doubt that governments across the world, business leaders, will really start to think about, what is the opportunity that we need to invest in, as I was alluding to previously. So I think hopefully it will be a vehicle for us to channel the right investments into cybersecurity to really safeguard the benefits of digitalization for all.
Okay, final quick answer, if I may, Abdul Rahman. But I was fascinated in my last 3 years at the GCF. You do sit at the crossroads of East and West, but North and South. Actually, I was there. I think you'd share this view. The audience that you're bringing in, the stakeholders from around the world, Is that the base case for putting the center in Riyadh, that you don't have a bias as to the west or east, but you sit at the center and it can be more inclusive in that view?
Well, this is, I mean, the issue is a global challenge, but it is a shared opportunity between the different stakeholders. So our aim is that we make the GCF and the center as a platform that will bring everyone on board. In order for us to think together, in order for us to put the right solutions at the right time, which will help us to overcome this challenge, and we reap the benefits of that center. So that is the purpose of the GCF. The GCF was established with an objective to contribute in strengthening and boosting the cybersecurity posture around the world. And this is the Center of Cyber Economics is one of the initiatives among others. As you saw, John, in the previous editions, we launched many initiatives, and this is one of the initiatives that the GCF is putting for the world, and we are going to have more in the coming editions. Hopefully, you will join us there, John, and the whole team.
I was going to say, October 1 and 2 in Riyadh, and I'm sure we'll see the fruits of the center. Oiko, it's great to see you again. Thanks for joining us from the IND here in Switzerland, Lausanne. Abdurrahman, always a pleasure. Thanks a lot. Congratulations on the launch. Akshay, it's great that you hosted it here in Geneva on the inauguration of the center itself. And we look forward to see what's going to unfold here between now and October. Just a reminder to those who are watching in the Top Link community, this will be video on demand, and I encourage you and those watching to share it, view it yourself if you didn't caught us halfway through it, and we look forward to the next session. Ideally, we do this again in October in Riyadh.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, and thank you very much.